drop and give me 25. I'm the gunny.
It's time for the gunny.
The quarter deck. Lights. Get online right now. You got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, my bunch of knuckle-dragging, beer-drinking, hard-charging devil dogs. You're listening to The Quarter Deck. I am your host, Miguel, the Gunny Signs.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining me here on another great week on The Quarter Deck. This week, we're going to continue and talk about the VA benefits, and we're going to go ahead and close out our talk about VA education benefits. I've gotten a lot of questions regarding how to apply for these benefits, and today we're going to go ahead and discuss and look into va.gov so you have an understanding on how to apply, and everybody can see exactly how easy it is to apply for your education benefits. We're also going to look into our next chapter of our book, No Better Friend, No Worst Enemy. Last week, we saw how the division command was preparing everything in order for the 1st Marine Division to get ready to invade the country of Iraq to liberate the people. And we're going to go ahead and continue with our story and find out how the planning is going so we can find out exactly how the 1st Marine Division went in there, kicked butt, and came back home. Yesterday on our Facebook page, The Quarter Deck with Gunny Signs, we streamed live our first video podcast. So just a reminder to everyone that remember to go to our Facebook page, comment, ask any kind of questions or anything that you may have on your mind so we can go ahead and get those questions answered here on our podcast every single week. And remember, you can listen to our podcast on any podcasting application available. The Quarter Deck. If you're just tuning in, this is Miguel the Gunny Signs, and you're listening to The Quarter Deck. We're going to go ahead and continue our discussion and our topic regarding the VA education benefits that we have been discussing for the past couple of weeks. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions on my Facebook page regarding how to go about and actually apply for these benefits. Now, if you guys remember from the first week that we started discussing VA benefits, I referred to va.gov as the go-to website for any and all of your VA benefits questions or any kind of applications that you may have. Now, the VA uses this site as its main go-to site, but there are some applications that you're going to do that it's going to redirect you to the eBenefits portal where you're actually going to fill out the application. When you go to your va.gov site, it's going to ask you to sign in. Now, all these applications you can actually fill out without having to sign in to the webpage. However, none of your information is going to be filled out. So if you go ahead and sign in, your information will be go ahead and upload it to all of the applications. So that way, all you have to do is actually just verify to make sure that everything is correct and that you are ready to fill out the application. Now, when you sign into this site, they have different ways of having you to sign in now. You can use your DS login that you created, or you can use a couple other different password ways that it allows you to actually sign in with your ID.me account. You can create an ID.me account, and it's also a secure way for the VA to know that it's you. Of course, the DS logon, the login for .gov, and your My Healthy Vet login site password and login ID can also be used to log into that. Now, we talked about all these benefits in that, and for you to find out if you're eligible or not, they have a section here. Once you go into the va.gov site and you go into education, and you actually go under education and training, and then it breaks it down to how to apply. When you go there, it's going to give you a couple of different links that are located on this page. One of them is the link that tells you how to find out if you are eligible for VA education benefits. When you actually go on there, now it starts talking to you about the different types of benefits, the post 9/11, the Montgomery GI Bill, and what are the qualifications for you in order to apply for these benefits. Now, for the post 9/11 education benefit, we talked about that in the first, it was the 2 weeks ago we talked about that. And for anybody that came in after the time frame of September 10th of 2001, they would be eligible to be able to use the Montgomery GI Bill and then change over to the post 9/11 education benefit after that in 2001. Now, with these, you have to have been discharged under an honorable discharge. And that is no ifs and no buts about it. The VA requires you to have an honorable discharge in order for you to be able to use these education benefits. Now, with the Montgomery GI Bill, not only you have to be honorably discharged, you also have to have a high school diploma, GED, or 12 hours of college credit, and meet whatever program requirements you're trying to do, and all those things that you're going to have in order for you to apply. But the main thing is for all these benefits is that honorable discharge is a must. That's why it's very, very important, especially for those of you that are just now getting ready to get out of the service, that you fulfill your obligation, the contract that you signed, for you to be able to actually apply for these education benefits. Now, remember, don't get bummed and don't get all upset if you did not get out with an honorable discharge. The other option is also the Vocational Readiness Employment Program that we talked about, the VRNE program. That program is available for you to apply if you have a 10% disability rating or higher from the VA. You can apply for that program, and then they'll determine if you're eligible to actually use that program. Now, of course, if you have any questions at all regarding if you are qualified or going to be eligible to use these benefits, you can always contact the education line directly. And that number for them is 888-442-4551. And they are there to answer your phone calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure that you remember that it is Eastern Standard Time, that they're open and they will answer your questions. You will actually speak to a live person, talk to them, and they will look you up and let you know, if you're eligible to apply for these benefits. But again, you got to remember that you're not going to know if you're eligible for these benefits unless you apply for them. If you apply for them and they deny you, then you can always call them and find out, hey, what's going on? Why am I getting denied for this benefit if I served, did my time and all that stuff and everything? One thing that you guys got to remember as well is that with the Montgomery GI Bill, you only have 10 years after you got out of the service in order to use that benefit, or else it goes away. And a lot of the veterans that have gotten out, a while ago, they didn't understand that this benefit was actually going to go away, so they have to use it within that time frame, or else that benefit is completely gone. The post 9/11 education benefit, you can use it indefinitely now. Okay, it's known as the Forever GI Bill. So you're eligible to use that benefit for you to use it whenever you want, and as well as if your family has the benefit because you transferred the education benefits to them, they're eligible to use that as well. So as you can see, there are a lot of different forms that you can actually use to apply for all these different types of benefits. Now, don't get discouraged. It is not that complicated of a process. It is a very simple process. It'll take you no more than 15 minutes for you to actually be able to fill out that application, send it off, because the VA will receive it directly right away as soon as you hit submit that button on your va.gov account, and they will receive it right away. They will start processing it. Now, normally it takes about 30 days for this application to be processed. Now, you have to also understand that during the time that semesters are about to start, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people applying for their education benefits. So you need to make sure that you submit it within time and understand that it might take 30, 45 days or so for the application to actually be processed. But make sure that you're staying in contact with that certifying official at your individual school that you're attending, and that they know that the application has been filled out. And the majority of all the schools that are out there will give you a waiver for the fees for the tuition, all that stuff and everything else, for you to be able to pay that, and it will be paid directly to the school from the VA. It's guaranteed money for them, so most of the schools offer that waiver. So again, we'll continue on next week talking about another different benefit. If you have any ideas or any suggestions of what kind of benefit you might want to discuss next week, drop a comment or send me a question on our Facebook page. The Quarter Deck is brought to you by Miguel Science Photography. From the beginning of your family to the first birthday and beyond, Whether it's a retirement or a Marine Corps ball, Miguel Science Photography is there to make memories that will last a lifetime. Miguel Science Photography is a certified veteran-owned business. Contact them at miguelsciencephotography.com.
What we're gonna do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
You're listening to The Quarter Deck with Miguel the Gunny Science. It's time for us to go ahead and look back at our book, No Better Friend, No Worst Enemy. Now, last week, we discussed how the division was talking to an old Iraqi army general, and they were discussing their options, their best avenues of approaches to get down there to Baghdad to go ahead and take care of business down there once they cross the border into Iraq. Now, this week, we're going to go ahead and move in and start discussing about nuclear, biological, and chemical, or NBC warfare. Now, those of you that are like me and you can remember all the NBC training that we did in order to prepare ourselves when we were down there into Iraq, because it was a big threat. That was our biggest concern that we were worried about, because that they had weapons of mass destruction and they had used chemical warfare before on their own people. So that was a big concern. So that required a lot of training, a lot of wearing of the gear constantly to get used to wearing that. Now, if any of you have not ever done any type of gas training, any gas chamber training, or any kind of nuclear biological training because you weren't in the service, and I know that I have a lot of you that maybe were never in the service that do listen to our podcast. But what I want you guys to understand, imagine yourself wearing a gas mask, a charcoal covered suit, a top, a bottom, rubber boots, rubber gloves for the entire day. Now we're talking about desert heat temperatures down there in Kuwait and in Iraq. So it's miserable. It was miserable. Oh, I got chills just thinking about it, because I can remember the amount of hours that we had to wear those things when we were down there in Baghdad, just doing the training to get ready to go. So let's go ahead and get into discussing and reading what's going on with the rest of the 1st Marine Division in order for us to continue to do our invasion into Iraq with our book, No Better Friend, No Worst Enemy. The division contemplated the coming fight against the enemy, who was expected to employ WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. This threat demanded that the division personnel develop patterns that made donning mission-oriented protective posture, or MOP, gear second nature of the battlefield. During September, the division began Gas Mask Wednesdays to instill the concept in all its members. Gas masks were worn all day on the body and donned for 30-minute periods. Imagine that for a second here, okay? Gas Mask Wednesdays. It's like hump day nowadays, right? Every Wednesday, we had our gas mask on us the whole entire day. We carried them with us. We had it there on our side, like, just like we carry cell phones today. We had our gas mask. And for 30 minutes a day, we put our mask on and walked around with it for 30 minutes a day. That is how we started to prepare and get used to making it our second nature, having these masks on throughout the day for periods of time. So just imagine that for a second. Think about in your mind, how would that feel? Now, a lot of us have done it before. We've worn it. We got used to wearing that mask. But for anybody that hasn't ever done that, just put yourself in the shoes of the service members that went through all this training in order to get themselves ready for the initial invasion into Iraq. All right, let's go ahead and continue on here. Chief Warrant Officer Stacy Jambert, the division NBC officer, supervised an aggressive training effort to demystify operations in the NBC environment. Sergeant Tyreen Williams, the division's NBC operations chief, conducted a series of briefings that stressed proper wear, maintenance, and storage of MOP gear. Familiarization training with the detection and decontamination assets each unit maintained was conducted. Instilling confidence in the division's protective and detection equipment contributed greatly to the individual Marines' fighting effectiveness. The confidence in which the division entered a probably chemically contaminated battlefield was a direct result of these efforts. Saddam could potentially employ a multitude of chemical or biological weapons against the Marines, but they would be prepared. From running obstacle courses in MOP level 4, that is the highest MOP level that we had. That's gas mask on, tops, bottoms, gloves, and rubber booties, completely from head to toe. From running obstacle courses in MOP level 4 to conducting a re-enlistment ceremony similarly attired, the division made itself ready. If you can imagine that, individuals actually re-enlisting in MOP gear, complete MOP gear, just to get themselves ready and used to wearing that constantly all of the time. Almost 2 years before Operation Iraqi Freedom, the events of September 11th in 2001 gave special impulse to the division's preparations. On that very day, the division was conducting a preparatory planning session for a series of combined arms training exercises in 29 Palms based on the Iraq scenario. What a coincidence. I can remember clearly that day on September 11th of 2001. We were in the Quackenbush training area in 29 Palms, California, and we had just gotten the word that the towers had been attacked in New York City. So here I am doing this exercise that we were training for to go into a desert combat environment. And this happened. And we had to get prepared and understand that the whole training that we were doing was based in Iraq, and here we were actually dealing with Iraq itself, getting ready to go into Iraq and disarm them of all the weapons of mass destruction. The exercise planners present were eager to get into action against those responsible for those heinous acts, and considered aloud whether the division should change the focus of the exercise. Colonel Steve Hummer, the commander of the 7th Marines, calmly recommended that 1st Marine Division should change nothing in their preparations. When this all shakes out, our role in this will be to attack and destroy those responsible for this, using a well-trained combined arms team. The best thing the division can do for our nation right now is to keep training. Our turn will come. That is what he said. And he was right. The Desert-Schmieder series of exercises formed a foundation for successful execution of division command and control in the combat operations to come. In anticipation of the requirements to conduct command and control over long distances, conduct deliberate river crossings, and spend extended periods in the field, the division carefully crafted the Desert-Schmieder exercise to contain all of these challenges. The plan called for an exercise in 2 parts: a defense against 2 attacking Republican Guard divisions, followed by a rapid explosion attack over a long distance, culminating in a major river crossing operation. The distances covered in the California desert during the exercise were hauntingly similar to what we would expected of the division a year later. And environmental restrictions encountered in the U.S. mirrored real terrain restrictions in Iraq. The exercise scenario included objectives such as seizing key oil fields, isolating large cities, traversing impassable terrain, and conducting major river crossings. During these exercises, the division headquarters practiced multiple passages of control between main and forward CPs, command post, and gained valuable experience in providing command and control over large distances. The staff exercised satellite communications, long-distance radio communications, and developed a battle rhythm for sustained 24-hour combat operations. The Division G4 stood up unit movement control centers to control battlefield circulation and movement on main supply routes. The exercise culminated in a simulation 2-site expeditionary crossing of the Colorado River. All of these tasks will be critical in the fight the division would conduct in Iraq less than a year later. The division was able to arrange for training between 29 Palms and the Yuma Proving Grounds by negotiating land use with a variety of private and governmental agencies. The patriotism and cooperation of the citizens of the training area was inspirational and made a difference in the Marines' ability to fight just 1 year later. So just thinking about that, how everybody came together back then to make sure that the military was going to be trained and ready to go defend our nation. If we can just look back at the way everybody was united back then, and we look at society today, the way we were back then is where we need to be right now, is where we need to be to get back to that feeling of being united as a country. The regiments and battalions of the division struggled with doing an additional preparatory work and getting ready for the particular conflict, while trying to maintain elements of normal training plans and juggling the requirements for larger events such as MU workups, combined armed exercises or CACs, and the unit deployment program UDPs. The combined training and operational tempos were brutal and drove plans for 2-day weekends or summer vacations off the table. Even so, the Marines of the division did not bemoan their fate. Marines, recognizing that their skills would soon be tested against their potentially tough opponent, were eager to hone their skills in true warrior fashion. The Marines of RCT-1, RCT-5, and RCT-7 each shouldered their unique additional burdens without complaint. Their actions well before the conflict ever started were nothing short of heroic. 7th Marines was an example of the tremendous amount of work all members of the division were accomplishing in preparation for this conflict. The regiment had originally been scheduled to participate in CACs 5 and 6 in March to May of 2002. The demand for the regimental participation in the Desert Schmichter series of exercises bumped this plan to CACs 1 and 2 in October to November of 2002. The regiment made an adjustment to their training plans and conducted the Desert Schmichter series, a September Division Command Post Exercise, or CPX, a simultaneously supporting divisional level operations planning, NBC defense training, and a vigorous syllabus of embarkation planning and assessment. Individual battalions played heavily in the preparatory actions. One example was the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, who trained at Camp Pendleton in May in the Basic Urban Skills Training Assistance Instructor BUST A1 program to build a cadre of military operations and urban terrain instructors. They used those skills in the Millennium Dragon 02 and the Urban CACs in July and August of 2002. In September, the battalion participated in the division's CPX, then was evaluated in the NBC Defense Marine Corps Combat Readiness Evaluation, the McCree standards. With no rest, the battalion served as the ground combat element, the CGC, for the October and November CACs. Another fine example was 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. The battalion dealt with the unpleasant manpower implications of returning from a UDP rotation. Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Colon planned to lose half of his well-trained and experienced Marines and replace them with new personnel within a matter of months. The battalion established an impressive series of junior leader schools, as well as participating in the BUST A1 training and the Steel Night exercise. Layered on top of these training events was an extended cycle of planning and replan for combat operations in Iraq. Because of the mode of employment for the battalion was uncertain, a limitation in the equipment carried by the MPC-ROM program, the battalion had to plan and train for employment as a heliborne force, a mechanized force, and a truck mobile infantry. Battalion training regimes for each of these methods of employment were deployed and implemented. 1st Battalion, 4th Marines faced similar shortfalls and manpower. Having returned from deployment in June of 2002, they assumed duties as the 1st Marines Training and Support Battalion, providing over 200 Marines to support the Fleet Assistance Program, or FAP, the Camp Augmentation Program, CAP, and the Camp Guard. Coupled with the natural attrition of Marines reaching their end of obligated service, the battalion's on-hand troop strength was a fraction of what it once was. Lieutenant Colonel John Mayer, who served as the division's plans officer, assumed command in August of 2002 and charged his commanders and staff to get your outfit in order. He directed the training priority as command post exercises, small unit leadership, NBC defense readiness, physical fitness, and combat marksmanship. The battalion's forward and main command groups and logistics train conducted weekly command post exercises, or CPXs, to refine their techniques and procedures. Select members of the staff also participated in the Mountain Warfare Training Center staff planning course in December of 2002. So as you guys can see, things are moving along. But just thinking about all those things, all those training methods that they're talking about, it brings back so many memories, because those are the things that we did. I can remember that Operation Schminkter when we were down there in 29 Palms doing our training. When all that happened in 2011 with the towers. And we were there in the middle of the desert getting these news. Now I can remember that I was looking and listening on the radio. When I mean looking is because I happened to take one of those small little old school battery powered little black and white antenna TVs that they used to sell to go camping. I had one with me. You should have seen it. It was a sight, because here we had about 120 Marines gathered around this little small, maybe 5-inch or 6-inch little screen, watching as the second plane hit the tower. We sat there in silence because we had just seen what had just happened. And if you can imagine, everybody remembers where they were when that event happened, when that tragic event happened here in our nation. But to me and to the Marines that were there, the feeling of wanting to do something right away, but we could not. But as we can see, the division is getting prepared. They're getting ready for any kind of obstacle that may come in front of them to make sure that they're successful and they accomplish the mission. Next week, we'll continue to read on, and we'll talk about the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion and their training for the new mission that they were going to be doing and conducting once they crossed the border into Iraq. The quarterdeck. Another week, or maybe should I say a whole nother month, right? Here we are at the end of July and getting ready to move into August. Wow, the time keeps on flying and the days just keep on flying by. VA benefits continue to move along. And like I said, today we went ahead and pretty much ended talking about education benefits. And if you have any other questions or anything that you might have on your mind regarding any of these benefits, please send me a comment, post a question on our Facebook page, The Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs. I take a look at that and I look at all the questions and jot them down to try to get the answers that you guys want for us every single week here on our weekly podcast. Also, a reminder that, and along with our weekly podcast on the Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs Facebook page, we will be doing live stream podcasting, video podcasting as well, to be able to interact with you guys there. The comments will be live. We'll be able to answer any kind of comments. If any of you are interested in possibly coming on the show and just having a discussion regarding any of the VA benefits, or just talking about some of the stories that we had, that we shared, or anything that can relate to our reading of No Greater Friend and No Worst Enemy, let me know so we can get you scheduled and we can get on here on a phone conversation and be able to record you on here to jump on our show, and we can just talk about whatever comes to mind. So again, you've been listening to The Quarterdeck with Miguel the Gunny Signs. I appreciate you. Thank you guys very much for joining me this week. And just a reminder that you can listen to our podcast in any podcasting application that is out there. And as well, do not forget about our podcast video series starting on The Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs on our Facebook page. So until next week, this is the Gunny sounding Liberty Call.
Get out the bus!
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.